All right, Leslie. Leslie, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I grew up in New Hampshire. I went to college in Boston, and I was, one of those Raver kids from the late 90s, New York City.
Oh, is that right?
Boston, yeah, for sure. We were doing the selling acid and ecstasy back in the day. And I ended up in college. It was like a trade school. This is kind of like another one of the weird stories with like Mafia Whitey Bulger dude. I lived in the North End. I lived right on Salem and Sheaf Street. I went to North Bennett Street School, which is a trade school for carpentry. And it was a cool experience living in the North End in the late 90s, like 95, 96. I broke my back in a car accident and on my way to work one day, and ended up having to move back to New Hampshire. Got this, insurance settlement for like nothing. It was like, I didn't have insurance on my car, but it was like the other guy's insurance. But they gave me like 27 grand and I was 18 years old. And it was like, yeah, I'm the fucking man, dude. I got like a BMW and some snowboard gear. And my mom had been pushing me towards like leaving, kind of, like get out of here. You don't need to be here, but you don't want to go back to New York City. You don't want to do any of those, just blow the money and whatever. So she like made a deal with me where she was like, I'll give you all the money or I'll give you half. And half you can just stay here and you can do whatever. I give you all the money and you should just go to Telluride, Colorado. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I went to Telluride when I was young. I was about 19. And that's pretty much where the whole like life began, kind of thing, where it was like out on the road, living in the Wild West. And started growing weed, started kind of doing that, moved back to New York City, grew some weed again in Brooklyn, and 9/11 happened. And I was immediately like on one of probably the first flights that you could get out of LaGuardia. September 17th, I rolled back into Telluride, Colorado. And I was back there and, working, cooking jobs. I've been a cook for a long time. I'm a lifer line dog, back of the house. And, always trying to have that little side hustle of growing weed and selling weed and stuff, and always trying to keep that party going. And ended up moving to Portland, Oregon, and I really learned how to grow weed, like from some professionals that was like really, really good stuff, and that kind of propelled me into the weed world pretty much. And I've been out west probably a lot longer now than I'm from the East Coast. So, I guess when people ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from New Hampshire, but I'm kind of like from Colorado at this point, but been out in San Diego for a long time. And, there's a couple of things that have happened over the years that are, they definitely have taken their toll on my psyche. And I ended up later in life, I didn't use a lot of drugs or alcohol when I was younger in my 20s, which I'm pretty grateful for. But in my 30s, I kind of started going down that rabbit hole, and then I couldn't stop myself. And alcohol was definitely like a major player in basically everything that's gone wrong in my life has a way of going right back to alcohol. And it's probably the Native American blood that I have. Maybe it's one of those things where it doesn't really work for me, and it's cool. I'm glad that I was able to kind of give that up, because I've realized that alcohol always led to something else. There was always cocaine. There was always something else, whatever kind of behavior. There's so many stories, and like I was trying to like maybe just kind of limit it to one, but it's so intertwined with like the whole thing. So there was a time where I was working for these dispensaries here in San Diego, and my ex-wife and I, she was like the manager and I was the buyer. And so what I was doing was trying to feed 3 dispensaries enough weed to, sell for the week, and they had to have different kinds, and they had to have different varieties, and there needed to be edibles, and there needed to be hash and all the stuff. And I had all the contacts in the world from being out here and playing the game that I knew enough people that I could do this job.
And this was legal or not legal?
Legal in the eyes of the state of California, definitely not legal in the eyes of the federal government. And this is also where I found the difference between the two, because there's a pretty blatant line. The federal government doesn't give a fuck what the state law is. They don't care. They find it illegal, it's illegal. They want to come and get you, they're going to come and get you. So I was working for these dispensaries picking up all this weed, and so I had all these different connections with different farms up north that I had worked with personally, a handful of people, and then there was people that I was meeting through the dispensaries. And some of the people that I met through the dispensaries ended up being one of them was the victim from the documentary Murder Mountain, a kid named Garrett. And Garrett was a customer at first of one of the dispensaries, local kid in Ocean Beach. And I said to Brian, I didn't really know him all that well. I knew, that he was a local kid, and a good kid, good head on his shoulders, just wanted to grow weed, just wanted to make money, just wanted to get that every summer grower harvest payout, that 50 grand, And I went up to go meet with those guys from that farm and some others to go. It was like right before Thanksgiving, and I went up there to, I knew it was harvest season. I was going to go and grab a bunch, and I already had a bunch, and ended up being like this weird, like, no, you can't come over. There's things going on. You don't even want to come past this gate. You don't want to like do whatever. And it was like, okay, I kind of showed up at the gate. I got yelled at, and I was told not to be there. And, there was definitely like some weird shit going on. The vibe was off. And so I was like, all right, I'm out of here. But if anybody wants a ride to San Francisco or San Diego, I'm going. So, give me a call. I'll be in town for another hour, having lunch and whatever. So I just left. And
this was where?
This was in Alder Point. It's just up in the mountains, up in Humboldt.
Humboldt.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I left. I went to town. I went to Garberville, had lunch. Nobody called me, and I left. And I want to say that like 2 days of me being back in San Diego, my contact for the farm showed up at my house in San Diego, and he was visibly distraught and crying and, freaked the fuck out and told me this horrific fucking story. And, apparently Garrett wanted to go home. He was done. He was owed $50,000, 30 grand or whatever the number was. And he wanted to go. And he apparently wanted to like call me and have me come pick him back up and take him back to San Diego. The dude flipped out. And, from previous times of me being up there, I knew that there was lots of guns on the property. There's lots of cocaine. There's lots of, whatever. And so Dave told me that the dude came out of the room and just blew Garrett's head off right in front of him, and told him that, in order for him to leave, or if he wanted to leave, he was going to have to help him bury the body. And, so he definitely, he saw something that I didn't see, but it was definitely a traumatic experience. So he came to my house, he told me the whole story. And, we had a grow operation in my backyard. We ended up like knocking it down the next morning because we were kind of just like, on a, maybe cops are starting to know, maybe something's up. Maybe we need to, start tightening up shop a little bit here.
That's what the Murder Mountain story was all about.
Yeah.
The documentary.
Yeah. And so a week later, one of the warehouses that I had been working with and working at with a friend of mine got busted, and Homeland Security came in, and ICE, the Customs Enforcement, and it was like this big mayhem. You know, we weren't really, like, we were kind of growing weed there, but not really. It was just babies. It was just clones at the time. There was about 300 of them there. And so the feds came in and they took my friend to jail, who had nothing to do really with the grow. Like, he kind of was, but he was just more living there. Either way, I didn't think that it was, you know, that it was worth him going to jail. But they had found a gun in there. They had found, you know, weeds, which became him an unlawful possessor of a firearm, which holds 5 years. And they were trying to charge him with conspiracy, which is another 5 years. So he's looking at 10 in the feds, which is a pretty daunting, scary thing that happens. Like, you know, when it's that little piece of paper comes across and it says USA versus you, it's terrifying. You know, it just is. And so me being the friend that I am, and this is maybe the cautionary tale here, is be very careful about what you say and who you say it to. I interjected myself into this case, and I had no place there. My name wasn't on any list or anything, but I found out through the Bureau of Prisons, and I was drinking at the time, so my thinking wasn't very great. But I found my buddy through the Bureau of Prisons website. I found his number, started writing him letters, started putting money on his books. I got his unemployment switched to direct deposit, so he was getting unemployment like while he was in jail. So like he was gonna get out with money on a card. Like I had all this planned out. Like if this is what I would want someone to do for me if I was gonna go to jail, you know, is to have a friend like me. I showed up at his arraignment, and mind you, I've never been to a federal court. I don't know the prim and properness. I don't know how. It's very professional, you know, and this woman, this prosecutor, as AUSA, starts going off about my friend and how he's a drug-crazed, gun-wielding maniac in the streets of San Diego with armor-piercing rounds, over 1,000 rounds, and all this stuff. And I stood up in court and I was like, "You're a fucking liar. You're a douchebag. You're a fucking lying douchebag, lady." And the whole court turns around and looks right at me. And it was like, you know, the music stops when you walk in the bar that you're not supposed to be in, you know? And it was like, okay, I did something wrong. I don't really care. You're still a liar, lady, but this is my friend Dave, and he's awesome, and he needs to come home with us like right now. And that's just not how it works. And so I made a scene. I get escorted out by the U.S. Marshals. The prosecutor comes out, and I start yelling at her in the hallway. And she is like, she's got this smile on her face, like, "I've fucking got you. I don't know who you are, but I got you." And I should have known that they were going to follow me home, you know, that they were going to start doing whatever investigation on me. And I was just so unaware of the federal government and what they do and the reach and the scope that they have, that my hubris was, I'm still sending packages to the East Coast. I'm still putting stuff in the mail that next morning. And when they decided to come knock on the door, they finally, after about a week of following me around, they came and knocked on the door, and the special agent was like, "You know, you're pretty boring. You go to the dog park and you go to the post office, you don't like do anything." And I was like, "Yeah, I just go to the post office." I'm waiting for him to like tell me that, "All right, we got you on the 5 pounds and the 10 pounds of mushrooms and the whatever." And I was like, "Hey, did you write a letter to a guy named Dave Drake?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I did. Yeah." And in this letter, did you threaten to hit somebody with a hammer? And I was like, "Oh, maybe." I mean, maybe I said that the guy that is on the other side of the warehouse who got caught with the 11 pounds of meth that's been storing it for the Hells Angels, maybe, yeah. Maybe I said something to Dave that, you know, that guy, if he's fucking around with the Hells Angels, then he's going to get a hammer upside his head. That's what happens when you mess with those guys and you mess with their drugs and you do whatever, you know? And so I apparently said this in this letter. And mind you, I don't remember writing this letter because I was drunk and I was drinking. And I just started laughing. I was like, this is why you're here? Like, I don't get it. Like, what's the charge? Like, witness tampering. Apparently, this guy that I was talking about turned federal witness midway through this case. I would have never known that. That's not anything. And so he became a federal witness through this case. And then therefore, the guard who found the letter from tossing Dave's cell, his perspective was that it was deemed a threat and I was threatening somebody. So between the guard and the prosecutor, they found something to kind of get me. But in all reality, we found out later in the case that this was an ego-driven thing because I called her a douchebag in front of her coworkers and colleagues. And she was very mad about it. And this was an up and rising star as the AUSA in San Diego. Her goal was to give out 1 million years of time. That's like she was prided herself in saying that. That's what she wanted to do with her career. So as you can tell just from that, that's like an awful person. But I decided, because I'm a crazy person, that they came to me with a deal about 3 months later after me having a lawyer and firing a lawyer, getting a lawyer, and, you know, doing the back and forth. I was downtown for about 3 months, and they came to me with a deal that was witness tampering held 25 years, mandatory minimum. So if they convicted, I went to trial and they convicted, I would do all 25 years. And they offered me, I could go home today, time served, I would have a federal felony, and it would be a year and a day. So however their sentencing works, or however, and it would be time served, it would just be like a year plus a day. And I knew from that moment on, if they're offering me a year and a day to go home right now, that they had absolutely fucking nothing. So what do I have to lose? I'm already in jail. I've already lost everything. You know, my wife she's barely hanging on. One dog died when I was in jail, you know, and it was one of those, you know, the perfect storm of things. And I just decided that I wanted to, like, fuck them. You know, you got me on 25, prove it. Let's see what happens. Let's play this game, you know? And I've had this thing, my mom always said that I have this ability to step in a pile of shit and to come out wearing a tuxedo. And I'm able to, like, talk starving dogs off a meat truck, you know, like she always had these little things she said I was able to do. And so that just kind of stuck with me. I was like, all right, I'm going to talk these starving dogs off this meat truck. And this meat truck is me right now. So I'm going to make sure that, you know, these guys, I had this great lawyer, and in the Fed system, you don't really go with the paid lawyers. You should, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you go with the federal public defenders because they have a relationship with the judges. They have a relationship with the clerks. It's good morning, Miss Morgan. It's not like, who the fuck is this guy? And that's what I noticed when the big paid lawyers came in for the big gangster dudes. You know, the big gangster dudes in jail would be talking about how they got this $100,000 lawyer, and they were going right back into the system, like right back to where they were going, because the judges and the clerks are like, who's this guy? Yeah, cool, man. You got a nice car. Great. It's not what we're doing here, you know? And so I got placed again with these, like, the top guys in the office, and they wanted to see this woman go down more than I did. Like, the guys in the office were like, oh yeah, you got her? Oh, I've been wanting to take her to trial for a long time. Like, let's do this. You know, they believed in me. They believed that they were going to train me basically to go in front of the jury myself, which is something that doesn't happen in the feds. Like, not a lot of people don't do that. So they released me from jail on my own recognizance, which doesn't also happen in the Fed system, but somehow we got this PR bond. And I got this wrist surgery. It was the U.S. Marshals when I was in there. I was scheduled for surgery, and the U.S. Marshals broke it. They re-broke it in custody. They were like crumpling my wrist, and it basically just kind of crumpled, and one of the guys was like, oh, shit. So they let me out so I could get this surgery. I get this surgery. I start fighting the case. I take it to trial. I won. I got 7 not guilties and 5 guilties. And they put me up on the witness stand, And like the training for the witness stand was like, you know, the first day the head of the office was like, you're going to jail forever. If you act like that, you talk like that, you talk to this prosecutor like that, you're going to jail forever. By the end of I think it was called trial prep. By the end of the trial prep, they were like clapping and they were like, you're going to win an Oscar. Like, you're the guy. Like, you're going to go home like that day and everything's going to be fine. So we get to the trial, and it's 7 days. It's over Super Bowl Sunday, like that week kind of thing. And they brought in like Hell's Angel witnesses, like professionals, because apparently the bigger scope of the case had to do with that and the meth storage and stuff. And so when they were talking about my friend Dave and they were talking about me, it had nothing to do with those things. But they had all these experts, and like the expert guy was like, I don't know who that guy is. Like, he's not affiliated with anything. I don't know why I'm here, you know. They had an expert to go through my phone. They didn't find anything, you know. And it was like, so the trial, you know, it goes 7 days. It gets down to the wire where they can't sway any of the other jurors. It's 7 of them. They're just like, they're stuck with not guilty. They're at that impasse. So I'm doing the go home thing and come back, the go home, the come back. And I go home and one of the lawyers calls me and she was like, the prosecutor isn't licensed to practice law right now in your trial. And she hasn't been licensed to practice law for the last 2 months. She's let her law license overlap. Through a conflict of interest, we can't do anything with that information, not right now. If we were to go and say something to the judge would be like, where did you get this information from? We would be possibly putting one of her colleagues who gave us the information under the bus. They didn't want to do that. So she said to me, you have one of 2 options. You can come back to the courtroom and you can receive the judge's verdict knowing that this woman who just made your life living hell for the past 3 years isn't licensed to practice law and is in the wrong place, and you can just go home that day and you can live with that. Or you can go up to the street and you can go get a burner phone and you can call this number. And I went to go get a burner and I called this number, and it was the court reporter for the San Diego Union Tribune, Greg Moran. And I talked to him and I left a message. He called me back and I talked to him and I was like, I'm in the middle of a trial right now where she's not licensed to practice law. We get a call to go back to the courtroom for an emergency something. The judge has an emergency hearing because the information got to him immediately, you know, immediate hearing. We get pulled in and it's just, you know, the judge is going off on this prosecutor. How dare you have the audacity to pretend that you are in this capacity that you're in right now, and how important it is for you to have this law license in this situation. This isn't like a memory lapse. Like, he went off on her and it was awesome. It was like one of those like, yeah, we won, we're gonna win, you know. Like,
was this the woman that was giving you a hard time?
Yeah, the prosecutor.
Oh, that was
like,
her.
It was awesome. It was like she lost her job that day. So like, not only did this case, like, did I interject myself into this case that had nothing to do with me, and then I fight it, I win, and then I get a prosecutor fired. So it was like,
that's pretty sweet.
It was pretty sweet. It was like all these like perfect storm.
Your mom was right.
Right, totally.
Stepping dog shit, wearing a tux.
Yeah, I was wearing a tux that day for sure. And so the judge declares a mistrial, and then I found out, which I thought was odd, but I figured it was over. Wrong. Because she wasn't licensed to practice law, the federal government deemed that they needed to retry the case with a different prosecutor. And so instead of going through, and I'd been denying all the deals that they had offered, I was like, no. I want to see you fight, you know. And the fight was terrible. Like, during the trial, she made a complete ass out of herself. She really was. It was an ego thing. And it came out through the judge that it was, you know, she kept trying to tie weed in, and the case wasn't about weed. It was about me writing a letter. So the judge kept, like, you know, everything she would try to throw in as some sort of last minute evidence or whatever, the judge was just like, no, that's not it. So they declares a mistrial. And then they came to me about 2 weeks later, and I'm on post-trial supervision, which is, at this point, I'm still getting P-test, I'm still getting whatever, home checks. And the judge brings us in, and he kind of like made the prosecutor offer me a deal. And I don't think she wanted to offer me this deal at all. And it was like her last bit of business in the office kind of thing. You could tell that like she needed to do this, clear this up, and then she was fired kind of thing. And they offered me a federal misdemeanor obstruction of justice. And before she even got the word justice out, I had a pen. Like I was ready to sign it. Like, it's fine. It's a misdemeanor, like whatever. But not knowing that I still needed to be sentenced for that crime. So I got time served. And I got 60 days in a federal halfway house, which is basically jail in your own clothes. And so when I was in jail, like the halfway house, it was just up the street from my house. And so I would sign out every day under the guise that I was looking for a job. And I would go home and I would take the dogs out to the park and I would hang out with my wife. And then I would print out menus of restaurants that I said I went to. And then I would come back to the halfway house with the menus and it'd be like, yeah, I went to these places. They're not hiring. And I did that every day for 2 months. And every day I would come home and we were packing. And we decided we were going to leave and go back to Telluride because I would never see a federal agent or another, DEA or a case ever again or whatever. And that's where, when I got to Telluride and got back there was when it all hit, like everything. Everything that I'd been through in the past 4 years, it just all hit at once. And it started kind of sending me into this like spiral of, I'll just drink every day. I'll just go to the bar, angry chef guy yelling at servers every night or, doing that. And I didn't realize how much going through all those things, even though I still feel like it didn't really have so much to do with me, but I was just there. I just happened to be in this squad or in this crew that knew what this was or whatever. And it just always kind of, you find out that like you're your biggest problem. that moment.
Very common.
Right. That's when I started kind of realizing that I was the problem, but it also that whole case reconfirmed that they didn't know what I was doing. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to be a drug dealer again. I'm just going to keep going. If they didn't know anything, they didn't even bring it up. And that's what I thought they were there for. I was telling Brian, like, when they came to the house, it could have been a myriad of things at that point. And it was like something that I wrote a letter. Like, fuck. Oh, okay. But it affected me in a way that I don't know if I didn't know if I was like ready to deal with. And I definitely, it lasted for years. I almost lost a couple of businesses. I have this clothing company that I've been working on for 10 years and I almost lost that. And, went back to the East Coast and lived in an RV for a while. I ended up selling blow on the East Coast because no one can get it. And it was, my friends were smoking meth or doing meth. And it was like, why? Well, we can't get good blow here. It was like, oh, I can solve that problem. Oh, that's easy. But then it started just being a bigger problem, And then that's when I decided to get sober. And this dude helped me make that a reality. We were in a pretty bad place. This guy was chewing through walls probably to kind of get away from me or whatever. Every house that I was living in had chewed up walls every time I'd leave.
How old is Starsky?
He's 13 now.
13.
Yeah, so he was still about 9 or 10 when I started kind of getting sober. And man, the mushrooms were pretty integral in that one, and DMT as well.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. That was I had been smoking crack for a couple of days. I've been making foilies and doing whatever in this broken down RV, hating on myself, looking at the mirror, telling myself to go fuck myself, you know, doing all the bad shit that I could do. And I don't know I really never liked cocaine all that much, but there was something about that feeling, you know, like that was just, it worked at the time, you know, I thought it did. And
Crack or cocaine?
Both. You know, just doing blow was okay, but it starts to hurt after a while. And so I was like, you know, I'm a drug addict. I still want to get high. So that's when I started smoking it. But that's a different animal. It's like a whole different animal is when you start smoking.
How different is crack from cocaine?
You feel it in your toes. I don't know how to explain it. But you're just chasing the first time. The first time's amazing. Whatever that feeling is, that's pretty awesome. You're just chasing that. But I had been smoking coke for a couple of days, and I was hating it. I was like, this is awful. I feel like shit. But you know where I'm going to get the answers? Because I've gotten some answers before. I do a bunch of psychedelics. I had some DMT. A friend of mine gave me, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole. I think it's time. I got some fucking answers that day, for sure. And they weren't happy with me, was what the gist I got. The entities that kind of show up during one of those sessions and those trips was like, it was so overwhelming. It was full, my whole body. I just kind of like stood there. I was sitting down, but I couldn't not see it. And all I could see was these big bubble letters with smoke that just said cocaine smoker. And I kept hearing it. I kept hearing cocaine smoker. Like all these like little, and it just kept coming at me, and it was like cocaine dealer, you know, and it was like, fuck. And then this little guy showed up. Like he always does. And he's like, right here. And usually everything he says, I'm always like, totally. Yeah, you're right, totally. Whatever he's saying to me, it's always usually something. And what he said to me this time was, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome here like that. Whatever the fuck it is that you're doing, it's all wrong. And again, cocaine smoker, cocaine dealer. And that's all I could hear. And I could just blow. It was like all these little things, and I was just like, fuck that. Whatever that was, that's not the feeling. That's not the lick. That's not where I want to be. You know, I want to be able to come back to this place, because whatever this place is that I've been here a couple times, I've learned something about myself, or I've learned something special. And I've had a pretty great experience with DMT and mushrooms, like every time. And it's been, you know, it's not been a recreational thing. It's been a very like intentional, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn something from this. You know, I need to get here, or it comes to you naturally. Like this is the time to do it. Set and setting, you know. And that wasn't one of those set and settings. That was forced. That was like, I'm going to get the answers because I've been smoking coke all day. You know, I feel like shit, and I'm going to do this DMT rip, and I'm going to get the answers, and dude's going to tell me. And it was like, I got hyper slapped into this like crazy space. And all I remember after that was coming out of it and just saying, thank you. And I promise. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll get sober for sure.
And did you after that?
That was it. I haven't done cocaine since. It took me a little bit to kind of, I had one weekend in New Orleans where I was with one of my connects from back in the day. And this was probably 4 months after. And he left the house and he had like 12 ounces of blow in the thing. And he was like, can you do me a favor? Can you weigh out an 8-ball for a friend of mine? And I was like, sure, no problem. He's like, you don't have to if you're not comfortable. I was like, nah, I'm good. I hadn't really touched anything. And for a handful of months, I felt like I was pretty good. I wasn't. I was like, I weighed out the 8-ball and was like, oh, well, that thing fell off. I guess that could just go right up here. But that was instant. Like, I was like, nope.
You were over it.
That was it. That was like, I felt like shit. I was like crying. I felt bad. I was out.
It was just that one day.
Just that one day.
Of DMT and...
Yeah.
And mushrooms did the trick.
Yeah, pretty much. And I did, so for about a year or so, I microdosed. And with like the help of a therapist, I kind of was talking to, I would do 3 days of microdose. I'd take a day off. I would do a macro dose. And then I would take a day off, and then I would call her and we would have a session. And I started learning a lot about myself, for sure, about the way the behavior works. And
That's great.
you know, it was awesome. And she encouraged the mushroom. She was the one that kind of brought it up.
How many years has it been?
Since I've got sober.
Yeah.
June will be the days that I decided. And then I want to say September, I was like fully, like I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't even smoking weed, nothing.
No,
So-
but how many years has it been?
So it's been almost 4.
4 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
So June will be the like 4th year. You know, September will be like definitely the 4th year for sure. But there was definitely like a 3-month period where I was like, I can have a beer. I'm good. You know, I can have a glass of wine. I'm good.
So no alcohol either.
No, I can't. I just can't. It all goes to the same place. And I know I can see the Rolodex.
What about psychedelics or weed?
The weed, I kind of just started smoking weed again. And it's only been because I just got a job again. And so my back hurts, you know, my feet hurt at the end of the day. You know, my mind races a little bit, but it's not as bad as it used to be. But yeah, no alcohol, no cocaine. Psychedelics are kind of, you know, every once in a while, me and my neighbor will go for like a Grateful Dead night over at the hippie bar, and we'll sit at the old man table and do a couple mushrooms and do some people watching. But there's no need for that consumption anymore, or whatever that was. I felt like there was like maybe some sort of something attached to me that needed to consume at all times. I needed to smoke a cigarette. I needed to have a joint. I needed to eat. I needed to have a water. I needed to have a beer. I needed to, you know, do something. And it was always some sort of consumption of something. And on one of those kind of vision quests, macro doses that I did, I asked, I felt like it was either aliens or fucking something came to me. And it definitely had that all-encompassing, I could feel whatever was around me, just the energy. And it was like, what do you want? And it's just like, I want this anger to go away. Like, I don't know what the anger is. I have like this anger from being like, when I was a kid, you know, I would like have a kind of a quick temper. And I just felt it kind of just suck out of my head. Like, it was like this weird, like these beings that looked like wedges almost. There was like 3 of them. And I just felt like one come close to me and like suck this out of my head. And it was like, great. Well, what else do you want? I was like, I have this pain right here, and it was from drinking. And it was like my liver or pancreas or whatever. And when I have too much sugar or whatever, or salt, it starts to hurt. And I was like, I have this pain, and I just wanted to go away. And I felt the same thing. Just like felt like this thing just kind of lift out of me. And ever since then, that pain's been pretty much gone. I don't really get angry about anything. Like, everything's pretty much kind of, you know, it is what it is, you know. But I do believe that psychedelics really, really helped me get sober, for sure.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, the power of the mushroom was definitely evident, you know.
In one day.
Over a period of days, but there was that one that was like, you know, I did like, you know, we were eating acid at the lake in New Hampshire, and like, you know, my buddy and I were listening to The Dead, and he said something about Terrence McKenna, and, you know, I went down the rabbit hole with him, and, you know, Terrence McKenna says that if you want to, you know, meet God and you want some of your problems like solved, then eat 5 grams in a dark room, quiet by yourself. And I was like, cool, we're going to do that. And so I ate like 5 grams with the dogs, and I'm in this RV, and it was just like, I was someplace else. Definitely someplace else.
How long does that last?
About 4 hours, 5 hours. Mushroom trips are about 4 or 5 hours, something like that. The LSD is always a little bit longer. That's like the full commitment. That's kind of why I like mushrooms, because you can eat mushrooms in the morning and like have a great morning, and then your afternoon's still fine and you're going to bed, where LSD lasts so much longer and it's kind of like a little edgy, But yeah, I mean, that's just one of the interesting stories that's happened to me in this interesting life.
Are you still married?
No, but we are better friends now than we were ever when we were together. We get together every Monday. She still has another dog that I brought home years ago. So we get the dogs together and we make food. She was a chef for a long time too. And so we get together, we make food, we take walks, and she's super proud of me for doing this thing too. She was like, I can't believe that you're going to go on Soft White Underbelly. That's pretty awesome.
Do you feel like what your mom said about you have the ability to step in dog shit and walk out with it? There's something about your makeup, your demeanor, your personality or something that just turns things a certain way so they have a different outcome?
I can feel the shift of an energy in the room when I walk into it. I know it. I've seen it numerous times. Like, especially when I was like DJing or do whatever, you feel it.
And we all have bad luck in our lives.
For sure.
But it almost seems like you're a lucky person.
I feel like I've had that I'm either on my 9th life, you know what I mean? Or it's like, we're getting there.
That's just something you're born with.
I'm on 7 or 8 or something. There's definitely, yeah.
How old are you?
46.
46.
Yeah.
Still young.
Still young. And this is what I tell other chefs. I mean, this is, my goal for wanting to be on like this and kind of putting my story out there is I want to help. I want to help this younger generation and my generation still of working chefs. I want to help them get sober. I want to help them realize that this life it's a lot better. It doesn't you don't have to be drunk, angry chef guy.
There's a lot of people in that field.
It runs fucking rampant, and it's tough to watch. I've had a bunch of friends die over the past handful of years, and each one of them is organ failure, liver failure, or, just didn't wake up, or has been still using and, wasn't telling anybody or whatever. I just had one of my, and this is one of my guys that was sober. He was sober for 15 years. He just passed away the other day, and he just didn't wake up. We could all wish to go like that, and just not wake up. But, that's a young chef in his late 40s and early 50s that's going to leave behind 3 girls and a brand new restaurant that he just opened up in Telluride, and, an entire community that is broken, and that's one of the things that, I know I can't stop that from happening, but I can help bring awareness, and through the t-shirt company and everything, and the way the community works as far as chefs work, it's a small little world. We all know each other, and we're providing a service. It's like that you start and you end your day within the service of others. That's where I want to be, and I want to be able to tell these guys that, they don't have to be fucking drunk, partying, raging maniac animals. That's cool in your 20s, But when you're in your 30s and your 40s and you got kids and you're starting your own businesses and stuff, just take it from me, it's not worth it. You'll lose everything. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to like kind of talk to these guys and at least reach them and at least give them an option to even start a conversation. Because that's how it started for me. It was a friend asked me, "Are you okay?" And I knew that this was coming from a place of love, and not a place of judgment, and not a place of, I know you, I know what you've been through. Are you okay? This is a bullshit, superficial question, and it was a loaded question, and I didn't know how to answer it. And the only way I could answer it was, yeah, I'm not. I'm fucking not. I'm not okay. And there's things that I need to get out in order for me to be okay. I need to get some of these things out. And I need to be in a situation where it's non-judgmental. It's not somebody that like I know, and that's where this comes into play. Like you said earlier, this is that platform where, you get your story out and you just reached thousands of people, and you just had 1,000 therapy sessions. Fucking great. That's what I want. You know?
That's what life's about.
It's about service, and I got that from my grandfather. You know, he was a fucking great dude. Pretty great guy. Started the Amputee Golf League for the National Amputee Golf League. Dale Borso, and he blew his leg off in World War II. And he was already a pro golfer when he went to World War II, and he came back, and the country clubs wouldn't let him play. And he wasn't having it. And so he devoted the rest of his life to getting to the point so amputees could play golf. And now it's a major thing. Now it's like, you know, if he was alive today to see that, he'd be pretty proud, you know. He used to say something to me all the time. Especially when he was dying, he would look at me and he would go, "Don't fuck it up." Oh, that's my goal.
That's great.
That's my goal. Don't fuck it up.
Leslie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
It was a great story.
Appreciate you.
When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.